Okay, let's move on to our. I guess this is our fourth most interesting series. I'll give you the choice here. Do you want to do Grizz Lakers or Suns Clippers?
Oh, definitely Grizz Lakers. There's no
Yeah,
way we're giving
Suns Clippers
We're
is
not
more.
giving.
That's
Yeah,
more interesting for like off-season implications maybe than the actual basketball
yeah.
that's happening right now. So yeah,
I mean, how? Okay, yeah. We'll
the
get to that
Grizzlies
series in a sec.
Lakers. The Lakers kind of just smashed them in Game 3 at home, first home game in LA. It wasn't particularly competitive. John Morant did come back. He didn't really look great until the fourth quarter, where he kind of had a individual scoring run of his own, where I think he scored every single Grizzlies basket for like 5 or 6 minutes straight.
Yeah, finished
But
with
outside of that,
45.
he I thought he looked pretty tentative, at least for the first three quarters in that game, and then kind of didn't really turn it on until the game was well decided.
Yeah, I don't think this series has been fun. I don't think either of these teams are that good. Like, who they play? Who do they match? Who does the winner of this series play? This is the
Kings or Warriors?
Oh, okay. That'll be interesting. I don't think anyone in the West is actually that good.
What happened to your
That's,
Nuggets?
I say that no. Well, I mean the Nuggets have looked good. I mean, except for last night when they just had kind of one rough stretch to give my Wolves some dignity.
Yeah.
But it really feel like the Grizzlies just really feel like they don't have enough. You're looking at a bunch of holes everywhere, and especially once they start going in their bench, it's like I don't like who's your. It's just a really empty front court. Like we already knew this going into it, and it's just like it's painful to watch it sometimes. Like shout out Xavier Tillman. He's doing a great job, but like he shouldn't be your second big, and like Santi Aldama has not had some sort of like playoff breakthrough or anything like that. So they throw David Roddy out there, and you're just like, what is going on? I think Jaren Jackson Jr. has had some awesome moments. I mean, he's been great defensively the whole series, and he's had some awesome offensive moments. And then, but I was never expecting him to be super consistent as an offensive damage doer in the series against Anthony Davis and against Jared Vanderbilt, against a pretty solid Lakers defense. Jaren Jackson has to punish them when they're small, and he's done some of that in this series, and other times it hasn't worked out. Shout out Rui Hachimura, who's been like, I do love watching, and you know who the player I forgot to shout out in our first series we're talking about, like Alex Len in Game 1. But I'm gonna just mention Alex Len and then talk about Rui Hachimura. I love seeing like a talented prospect that people had hope for a while, and their career didn't really go the way anyone pictured or hoped for, and they kind of hang on in the NBA, and every now and then they get a chance in the playoffs to just sort of like, for some chunk of time, being like, don't forget I'm really talented at basketball. And people like there's a reason that people thought that I was going to be a really awesome NBA player for a long time. And Rui just being like, I'm really big and strong and I'm a pretty good scorer. So if you're Memphis very clearly was like, we're not game planning for Rui Hachimura, and we're not going to he's going to be like, we're going to sort of leave him and focus our resources elsewhere. And Rui Hachimura is like, it's his time to shine. It's his time to shine, and he's delivered like fairly consistently in this series as just like a big physical scorer who's knocking down shots right now. So good for him.
Yeah, I've been surprised with Rui because it's not just the 3-point shooting. Obviously, a guy who has shot like 30% from his career, or even below that, I believe. I think like 29% for his career, hitting open threes. I mean, it's a little bit surprising, I guess, but they also have been wide open for the most part. But I think the more surprising thing with Rui has just been his ability to really take his man off the dribble. Maybe considering a lot of the time it's Santi Aldama, so I don't know how surprising that is. But taking his man off the dribble, getting into the paint, and then just hitting those pull-up jump shots. When he has been getting to the rim, he has been finishing. And these were the kind of the things that Rui lacked when he was in Washington. Like, it was a lot of settling for kind of deep mid-range shots. He loves to get in the post and have that turnaround jumper. I got to watch that for 3 years at Gonzaga. That is kind of his go-to move. He really likes to kind of slow down and settle in and he'll get to his shot eventually, but he takes his sweet time doing that. I feel like he's been so much more decisive in this series. Just like the speed at which he decides to take a shot or make a move has really surprised me.
When you have a moment when you're watching college games, assessing draft prospects, and there's like maybe a play that happens, or there's a game that happens and there's two NBA prospects in it, and something happens in that game that, based off what your opinions of those two players are, becomes like a really like marker moment of a moment of assessment based off like a one game thing you saw that's going to inform your take. I remember watching Duke versus Gonzaga in like one of those preseason tournaments, and RJ Barrett was looking off Zion in crunch time, driving down the floor against Rui.
Oh, yeah.
I think they were playing I think they dropped into like a 2-3 zone in crunch time, and Rui was playing in the middle, and Rui just looked so big and unsurmountable for RJ Barrett. And in my mind back then, I'm like, well, RJ Barrett, that's like probably the number one pick in the draft. This Rui guy, he's going to be a physical force in the NBA. Little did I know that RJ was going to be so disappointing that Rui stopping him on one of these absolutely shoveling drives to the basket was maybe not the most impressive thing in the world. That I would be actually watching entire NBA seasons of RJ Barrett having that done to him by everyone in the NBA, and that Rui was just going to be a normal NBA player. But I remember really changing my assessment of those two players, or knowing RJ was definitely going to be good, so therefore Rui was going to be really special. And
I remember the exact game you're talking about. I mean, Brandon Clark was a big part of that too, having one of the most impactful rim protection seasons in college basketball history for Gonzaga that year.
Yeah, and if Brandon Clark was healthy and playing in this game, we would probably be seeing a little bit more Rui Hachimura dominating those bench lineups kind of thing. But Rui as a scorer, doing exactly what you're talking about, as part of some of these lineups is just, I think, the right context for him. So good for him having a big series, averaging 21 points per game in the playoffs on just lights out shooting. That's big. This is a big moment. I love the Lakers starting lineup so much. It hurts me so much to say that because I hate the Lakers so much. But seeing LeBron play as this sort of connector piece that picks his spots. Mm-hmm. The playmaking pressure's not on him all the time. He can kind of hang back and pick when he's going to hurt you, and then also he's a really good option as it's nice to see LeBron taking a janky pull-up jumper is the Lakers bailout offense rather than the first
their
option
go-to.
it's been.
Yeah.
That's cool to see. And Austin Reeves has looked like a slow Manu Ginobili out there. If Manu Ginobili had no speed or Austin Reeves is a pretty good athlete, just not quite on a Manu level. And just seeing him fit in with D'Lo hasn't had a good series, not a huge surprise there, but still that's just a nice starting lineup. Those five just really, really fit and check so many boxes and can do so many things. And they just got a nice 9-man rotation right now that is nice to watch. And Memphis is the opposite.
They should have one. The one thing that I think should be concerning for Memphis is, Rui's been great, but their other reserves really haven't given them a whole lot. Schroeder hasn't been able to make a shot this series. Troy Brown and Malik Beasley, who are the other guys that fill out that rotation, have both been just ice cold. You'd expect at least with Beasley that would turn around at some point. So that's kind of what I'm concerned about is Grizzlies.
I waited a whole season for Malik Beasley to turn things around, so I'm not exactly...
Happens.
Yeah, I don't.
You didn't enjoy his first game with the Timberwolves where he hit 8 threes or whatever it was.
Yeah, I probably did enjoy that. It was but in the big picture, not so much. Yeah, that was the high point. When players leave your team and end up on your least favorite team, you don't want them to have a good series. I can't root against Vando, but all three Timberwolves are having a pretty poor series.
Yeah,
and I'm not mad about it. So. Do you still think are you still picking the Grizzlies? Your finals pick.
I think they definitely have the capability of winning this series still. I wouldn't say that it's over. I would say the Lakers' offense has looked really janky and their defense has looked extremely vulnerable whenever AD sits. So we still have that going for us. I think the main thing with the Memphis Grizzlies that's really hurt them is just lack of spacing. No one's really been able to make a shots other than Luke Kennard, who is playing significant minutes, but still isn't starting, still isn't in the game all the time. I think Dylan Brooks is kind of leading the brick mob, but no one else has really been able to space the floor very well. So I think the Grizzlies will absolutely need a hot shooting game, and I think they'll need Ja to really push the pace and kind of bring them out to an early lead. I don't want to call the Grizzlies front runners, but for a team that can't necessarily shoot and struggles to generate good offense in the half court, it's really rough if you fall behind by 15 points or 20 points early. So yeah. I'd be concerned if the Lakers start off well in Game 4.
Yeah. What you said about AD, like the Lakers don't have a backup big. When AD's off the floor, they just go
it's LeBron.
Small.
LeBron's the 5,
yeah.
So no rim protection
yeah.
really when Davis sits. Unfortunately, we have not seen the Mo Bamba show as fun as that would be.
Yeah, not a single minute. But I like a lot of the non-AD minutes are like they'll play LeBron, Austin Reeves, like Schroeder, Beasley, and Rui. So it's like Rui and LeBron are the two bigs. It's not even like Vanderbilt's the backup big.
Yeah.
So they play these. I'm not really that surprised that I don't know that like Beasley and Schroeder are struggling. Those are just those are not super good lineups, but Memphis does not have the depth to punish that either because they're looking for opportunities to get Ja and Jaren off the floor, and Jaren can't really play that many minutes anyways.
I think the Grizzlies, I guess Dylan Brooks isn't suspended, he's going to play Game 4, but I just kind of wish they'd start Kennard. Or maybe even start Tyus, start the two guards together. The Lakers aren't really scoring. I mean, their offense isn't terrifying you anyway, so I don't know why they're so insistent on playing Dylan Brooks 35 minutes a game, and he has to be in there every second to make sure.
Well, who's gonna guard LeBron when Dylan Brooks isn't out there?
But this is what I'm saying. I don't think
he's not playing big minutes. He's only playing 23 minutes a game.
I don't know if LeBron's necessarily going to go off on you, though, is what I'm saying.
Currently, Luke Kennard and Tyus Jones are playing more minutes than Dylan Brooks, so I think Memphis thinks the same thing as you.
I think I misread that.
You just want to tilt them even more extreme, and I just don't think they quite have the guns for it. And Luke Kennard is a defensive target.
Yeah,
he gets hunted when he's out there. So, but I think they're probably playing them the right minutes. I think they're really short one playoff rotation player. It's a 7-man rotation right now, and the two players coming off the bench for big minutes are. I mean, I guess if you want to include David Roddy, they're getting.
I was really impressed with how Roddy played in Game 2, but I understand he's a rookie and he wasn't that great in the other two games. So maybe you can't necessarily go to him for a significant contributor.
Well, I think he's shown flashes all year of being interesting, but yeah, he was so brutal in everything for every single moment except for the stretch that you're referencing right now. He's had a rough series. I think Zaire Williams completely disappearing is a bit of a disappointment. I'm also surprised that John Conchar is not in the he at least gives them a sort of he's not big, but he gives them sort of a physical, versatile presence. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Just maybe coaching staff thinks it's not the right matchup for him or something.
Yeah. They haven't been able to contain Ja at all, basically. I know that he hasn't played well 100% of the time, but in general he's doing whatever he wants for big stretches of the game, and Jaren Jackson Jr. over the course of the series has played really well and is averaging 36 minutes, which is we've never seen that, so that's kind of cool. So yeah, I mean let's see if they can storm back tonight and tie this series up, because I would still feel kind of good about the Memphis pick. I just think this series has definitely turned into a coin flip, and a lot of people thought it might be a coin flip.
I think I underestimated how much they miss Steven Adams. They're really getting punished by the Lakers bigs.
Steven Adams and Brandon Clark both being out is just you can't. They lost their whole front court.
Yeah. LeBron's averaging 11 rebounds a game in this series. basically
boy.
all of the Lakers starters are averaging at least 5. I mean, they're just getting boards.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
What's the next? Yeah.
Let's move on to the next series here before we completely lose our train of thoughts. I'll do it. Let's do Suns Clippers. I think this is a series I want to talk about, even if it's not necessarily one where it's super competitive at this point.
I cannot believe the shade you are throwing at the Denver Nuggets and Minnesota Timberwolves by saying that they're more boring than Russell Westbrook and Eric Gordon in a series.
I mean, we can go there too.
This series was going to be fun. Like, games 1 and 2 were fun.
Oh yeah.
Well, game 2 wasn't that fun, but like, you know, it was like whatever. The Suns came out and reminded us.
I mean, all 4
be.
games have been relatively competitive, I think.
Oh, the last game was like, it was competitive, but it was one of those playoff games where.
Well, yeah, it was one of those games. It was one of those games where the score was close, but you didn't necessarily like see the Clippers winning. You know, the Suns played down to them, and you know, part of that is like good coaching by Ty Lue and them finding ways to do things because they like. But there was just a lot of really, really, really ugly possessions for the Suns, and the fact that they're playing like, you know, Booker and Paul and Durant over 40 minutes a game to put down a team led by like Eric Gordon and Norm Powell and Marcus Morris, and only 8 minutes of Robert Covington and only 5 minutes of Nick Batum. And it's like this Clippers team is like, yeah, what is there to say about the Clippers? We've avoided talking about them so much in our podcast all year because they've been too depressing to talk about. And now they're like, oh, you were depressed by us in the regular season? Like, we've got a whole other level of depression that we can show you. How about no Paul George, no Kawhi Leonard? Apparently we have Russell Westbrook now. Like, how about we don't play Nicholas Batum or Robert Covington at all? How about we dust off Marcus Morris? How about Bones Highland gets extended playoff minutes? How about Mason Plumlee is like one of our most important players? Like, what has happened to this team that was supposed to be like, you know, like we were like, wow, we're gonna get the next coming of Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan. That's what Kawhi Leonard and Paul George signing together. That's what a lot of people thought when this team was initially formed. Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess my question for you, my first question for you is Torrey Craig the best fifth man in the league? But my second and possibly more serious question for you, I really think it's time to have a serious conversation about trading Kawhi and or Paul George this offseason.
How do you? But can you really trade them right now?
Well, I mean, everyone's tradable if you find a team that's desperate enough to take the risk.
But are you going to get back something that I said? Because essentially the question is, are you going to get enough of a return from either of those players that it's going to be worth the, you know, like random shot in the dark that you're going to get one healthy season out of this roster? Because like I don't know what, like, I mean, imagine your Blazers give up draft capital for Kawhi Leonard to pair him with Damian Lillard to go on a run next year. Are you happy about that?
Well, it depends on what draft capital we're talking about. I mean, if we get unlucky in the lottery and it's like the 8th pick in the draft.
But if it's more than that, like, you know, enough that the Clippers would want whatever you're trading for it. Enough that it's like, assuming the Clippers are getting something okay out of this deal. Because they're like in with the tax. They've got all of these guys locked up to huge deals. If it's a tear down, it's going to be like that's a lot to tear down. This is the most expensive team in the NBA. I think Paul George you could probably get stuff for. But I kind of think that
I kind of think that unless Kawhi or Paul George has like a career altering injury this next season, which you can't rule out with those guys. But if it's just another, I don't know, miss half the season because of nagging on and off stuff, and then they perform in the playoffs but get hurt eventually at some point, I don't necessarily know that their trade value is going to be any lower the following off season than it is this season, especially because that contract number is going to be lower. I don't know. I don't view it as a super high risk trade. I think like you're not selling your entire franchise for them at this point, you know. couple of contracts and a few draft picks, and you can't get that the following season if things don't work out.
It's more like, what are the Clippers getting out of this if they can't get a ton back for either of these players? These players can opt into $50 million player options in 2025. I don't know. I think they're just awkward players. I think Paul George, you can trade him, but I think Kawhi Leonard. I mean, Kawhi, like, I'm like, part of me expects him to retire at some point soon. Like, I'm not like I'm like not going to let Kawhi Leonard play games with my heart anymore. I'm not going to expect him to ever be healthy in a meaningful way again. Like, he gets just healthy enough that you're like, all right.
Well, I mean,
give this a shot.
This current injury that we're talking about is a sprained knee, unless there's something that we're not being told. It's
but he's got but he has a degenerative knee condition.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not.
It's the opposite knee that he hurt last year, but
I'm not worried about I'm not worried about this injury in isolation. I'm worried about him getting injured in the playoffs 3 years. Him not being able to play in the playoffs 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
That's like that's too many years in a row. That's like, at this point, it would feel like a miracle if Kawhi got healthy through a playoffs. Like, it just seems like it's hard to believe his body can hold up for an extended playoff run.
I guess, like, assuming you're getting at least maybe 3 or 4 protected first round picks, where they're not necessarily like, you're not going to get a high lottery pick, but you might get a role player. You may get lucky and get a real player. And maybe a couple of veterans for Kawhi, and maybe a pretty decent return for Paul George. Like, he has a very high level, second, third option when he's healthy. It doesn't quite hold the same injury risk Kawhi does. Like, is that better than trying to run it back next season for whatever incredibly slim chance that we make it to the playoffs and everyone is healthy and cohesive and playing well for the first round series, in which you're going to be matched up against a high seeded opponent and have very little margin for error because you took half the regular season off?
I don't know. I think this is a very tough question, and I'm sure that the Clippers front office is asking that.
I'm just curious because I'm very much team rebuild guy when things look bleak, when the future outlook doesn't look great, and that's not always the right decision to make, but that's usually where
and let's not forget about their draft capital. They don't have it,
right? Which is, in order to rebuild,
they
have to trade to get something to rebuild with.
Yeah. Now Houston is currently proving you can kind of do it. You just get your draft capital back by trading out your stars, but Houston, it has a couple, next year, I think. I don't have the picks in front of me right now, but I think, like, next year, Houston's pick is owned by OKC. So there's, like, this weird.
Well, it's like it's involved in a 4-way thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So the Clippers can't just pivot into a rebuild. I think it's more likely that the Clippers are just stay this version of miserable and hope they get lucky one of the years for the next, 2 seasons, unless something comes along that just changes those projections and they see, like, an opportunity to find a way out. If there's a pathway out for the Clippers, I think they should take it, but it's not clear to me that is going to be there.
So I wasn't on team trade Kawhi last season, but I think what's changed for me this season is seeing Paul George out the first couple of games. I mean, yes, the Clippers did win game 1, but game 2, like, Kawhi was incredible, and they still lost. And I just think the Clippers don't have the requisite depth and quality of surrounding pieces to win even a first-round series if either of the 2 stars is hurt. Whereas in the past, they could have maybe survived that for a series.
I think that's what is a little bit more interesting, is that, like, outside of, because I think our early seasons conversations with the Clippers were like, I'm pretty sure I said something like, even if Kawhi and Paul George are hurt a lot, I think this team is still good. And now it's clear, like, Marcus Morris. That's
before you realize Marcus Morris is bad.
And that Nick Batum is bad, and that Robert Covington is bad, or, like, at least they're not playing, and we have to I'll just be generous and assume that they're bad. And they keep acquiring more players. They keep putting, like, Band-Aid after Band-Aid on, and it just can't stop the bleeding.
I mean,
They like
Bones Highland more of a meme than an NBA player at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that game 2, the Clippers really gave that away. Ty Lue gave that away in one. In the third quarter, he had this lineup out there that was like 4 guards and what was like. It was like Kawhi came off the floor, and all of a sudden it was like Terrence Mann, Norm Powell, Mason Plumlee, Bones Highland, and like Russell Westbrook. It was just like what is the plan right here? What do you expect this unit to do? And they were out there for this key chunk of the fourth quarter, and Phoenix just pulled away, and it had been pretty close up at that point. It was just like I didn't. That would have put them up 2-0 in the series. Kawhi still would have gotten hurt. It really wouldn't have mattered. So like us debating the tactics of this is like, what are we really looking at anymore? But I will say the Suns don't look great, and I do think actually Ty Lue has done some pretty interesting things in this series to keep it competitive, but he's doing it with like janky lineups, like just trying to throw them off their rhythm. But the Suns definitely look off their rhythm, like pretty brutally off their rhythm. Lot.
The Suns just look determined to take a pull up 15-foot jumper, regardless of what defense the Clippers are playing. Regardless of who's on the floor, like that's just the offense that they're going to settle with.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that this isn't more like one of the reasons the series isn't already over is that the Suns rotation going forward for the Suns in this playoffs, they have to be confirmed about the fact that they have not figured out even a 6-man rotation yet. Mm-hmm. They got their starting 5. They're also reliant on Torrey Craig, like just
who's been
shooting
incredible.
Yeah,
I mean Torrey Craig shot
he's going to keep shooting the ball that well.
He shot over 40% all season on pretty high attempts, at least for, a role player.
He can shoot. I mean, he hasn't shot well over his career, so I still think, sample size. I know,
but like those corner threes are so wide open. I think like once you get over the hump of like, can you make an open shot in the playoffs? Like if you can make that shot, and they're just giving you warm up jumper after warm up jumper, like.
Yeah, but I just think he's going to hit 45% instead of 55%. Like right now, he's still over his, and I don't. But whatever. Let's assume Torrey Craig stays good. They haven't found a 6th player.
Yeah, they don't like Okogie. I think Monty Williams tends to panic just because Okogie.
He is a panicky coach.
Yeah, I mean the defense plays off Okogie, and Okogie bricks it, and Monty Williams yanks him. But like, I don't. Like at some point you can't play Kevin Durant 43 minutes a game, like you gotta live with Okogie's gonna give away some of it on the offensive end, but he's also like one of the best perimeter defenders in the league, and he crashes the offensive glass hard, and he gets you extra possessions sometimes, and I think he's a really good cutter. Like I understand that the defense plays off him, but at the same time, like you're pretty much just taking contested pull-up mid-range jumpers anyway. So out of all the teams in the playoffs, it doesn't feel like this is a team where Josh Okogie being out there is ruining their offense as much.
And Phoenix's mission in some of these minutes, just like, okay, we just have to survive 5 minutes of Bones Highland, Terrence Mann, and Mason Plumlee. And Monty Williams is like, I need Kevin Durant and Devin Booker out there. It's just like, no, I think you can survive this chunk of time. It's like, I would go so far to say I've been so disappointed in Monty Williams' coaching. If Kawhi Leonard was healthy, I'd be picking the Clippers to win the series. Like, I think it's been bad. Like the last 2 games without Kawhi have been pretty unimpressed, and especially the last one, even though like they won that game pretty clean, like they won it by 12 points, but it was just like really, really junked up offense. And if this is happening to them against Russell Westbrook and Norman Powell, like I don't see them beating the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, I mean it's hard. Like he can't figure out a way to scheme a defense, to get Damian Lee or Landry Shamet on the floor for significant playing time, and I understand Shamet's shot has really been struggling, so maybe that's one reason, but Damian Lee's like one of the best catch and shoot 3-point shooters in the NBA. He provides a lot of offensive value and spacing that you could really utilize on this team to get some much needed attempts at the rim, just drawing out that defense a little bit more. Like, I understand he's not the most awesome perimeter defender in the NBA either, but like, you know, at some point, like, you have to be willing to sacrifice a little bit of drop off in defensive quality, which I think is a little bit overstated, to be honest. But
put one of the stars out there with Josh Okogie, Bismack Biyombo, Damian Lee. Like, it's not that complicated. It shouldn't be. Extra minutes for Torrey Craig.
yeah,
it is crazy to see their minutes that high against such an undermanned opponent. Anyways, we've like Clippers. We finally talked about you. It was as depressing as I expected it to be. Do you have any final thoughts before we move on to the one series you've deemed less exciting than this? Oh no, we haven't done. We haven't done Boston Atlanta either.
Yeah, I'll say Monty Williams. I think DeAndre Ayton's just kind of lack of, I don't know. It's hard to understand exactly how to criticize DeAndre Ayton. It definitely feels like there's something left to be desired. He definitely seems to have a bit of a team chemistry issue with Booker and Paul. They just seem irritated beyond belief whenever he like misses a defensive assignment or doesn't box out or, you know, settles for like a fadeaway jumper instead of trying to finish at the basket. But I don't know. Like, there's something going on there that's hard to quantify because we're not on the inside of the team and can't fully understand what's going on. But
yeah.
Definitely concerning for a guy who picked this team to beat the Nuggets. Not feeling as good about that anymore.
Yeah, well, hopefully a different matchup will provide a different look for the Suns, but it is like they're getting dragged down in the mud right now. Like they're being successfully dragged down into the mud, and that's not always indicative of a doomed team, but it's definitely not a good look.
Are you buying into the Russell Westbrook-assance? Final question we should probably go over.
I was buying into the Russell Westbrook assance before Kawhi went down. When Russell Westbrook was playing that role he was playing, I really loved the offensive rebounding and the defense, and that he was really focused on those two things.
Yeah,
I don't care that Russell Westbrook can still like pile up stats when you put the ball in his hands and ask him to do things over and over again. Like, I feel like we've seen that over and over. We know how far that goes. I don't think anything has changed about his shooting ability or his like. The warts are all still there when you put him in that role. I love that he was finding his like role, rediscovering his like late career role player self that had eluded him these past several seasons. But then as soon as we saw that for like a game or two, it got taken away from us. So I'm off the Russell Westbrook-assance team.
Yeah, it felt a little 2019 Houston-ish, where Russell Westbrook, the second half of that season, was kind of just like Swiss Army knife guy. He was hustling. He was playing a little bit of defense. He was just playmaking for others, getting to the rim and really attacking the basket hard. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what we need Russell Westbrook to do. The shooting is still pretty bad. I mean, it's been slightly better on the Clippers than it is in the Lakers, but it's still well below league average efficiency whenever he takes a jump shot. So, I mean, it definitely has to be the right system, the right role for him. And I'm not like buying into Russell Westbrook being a good player again. I just think that it's team and context dependent. Yeah.
Before moving on to the two active series, why don't we just do a quick review of Nets versus Sixers?
Okay.
Just so we don't leave that to last and go out on a whimper. I thought that it was like still kind of a fun series to watch. Obviously, we knew the Nets were completely overmatched and the talent discrepancy was not going to be something the Nets really had any chance of overcoming. But I do think, from a Sixers perspective, it was a fun series to watch because I thought the Nets actually played them really well and leaned really heavily on the Sixers' weaknesses.
Yeah.
Like, mission successful, get the ball out of Joel Embiid's hands. Mission successful, hold down Embiid's, turn Embiid into a passer. Mission successful, frustrate the heck out of James Harden. But despite that, the Sixers were still able to okay, if you're going to lean that heavily on us, then we do have the tools on this roster to do other stuff. So Maxey had a huge series. Tobias Harris looked awesome. And it just didn't really matter. And I think a lot of people will be like, well, make fun of Embiid or Harden for having a bad series, and it's like they leaned on them all the way, and those players did the right thing, and they got the ball out of their hands quick, and that allowed the team to win this series pretty easily. It was still like the offense was fine. You know, the pace was slow, but if you look at offensive rating, they did fine. I thought Embiid did not look great out there, but he made the right decisions, which was just like, I need to just give up the ball and not be a part of the play because I'm like getting doubled on dribble handoffs. Like, I don't think I'd ever seen a player get doubled like that on a dribble, like a position where you already know Embiid's just going to be handing off the ball to someone else. Like, we're doubling him anyways, just in case he like sneaks around and does a turnaround or something.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you mentioned about them really playing hard, like trying to force the ball out of Embiid's hands, sending the quick double. I mean, it proved to be effective at Embiid. It does show, I think Tyrese Maxey really showed us something and showed us that this team isn't quite as ride or die with Embiid and Harden putting up stats and that pick and roll working to great effect as we had initially thought. I mean, they do have some other options offensively. I don't think the Nets exposed some things that the Celtics presumably in the next round are going to be able to take advantage of, though. One thing that was really concerning to me is Cameron Johnson had kind of the series of his life against the 76ers. Yeah. Wide open shots whenever he wanted them. And he was driving, too, and getting into the paint and finishing. And the 76ers really didn't have any answer for that. So I think their lack of ability to really match up and defend bigger wings reared its ugly head once again. But thankfully, the Spencer Dinwiddie show continues to be a pretty poor way to generate shots. So, the Nets just didn't really have enough offensive juice to compete.
Yeah, everything in their offense just felt like sort of a bit of a bailout. Like you mentioned the Cam Johnson stuff, and I think that was like kind of the best stuff their offense was yielding with him like sort of attacking the margins, because they were putting 2 on the ball against Michael Bridges, and it's like you can put 2 on the ball against Michael Bridges, but he's still probably just going to take a pull up anyways. So I don't really see the point of that. And yeah. Spencer Dinwiddie is going to it is dangerous, but like totally manageable.
To who? The Sixers, the Nets?
Both. Absolutely, more so, like I mean, he's definitely a player who, like, you know, he's a creative scorer who can threaten the bucket, but if you lean on that more than a little bit, it's not going to be great. He didn't have an awful series or whatever. He definitely had a couple of signature moments of just sort of like, it's Spencer time, and yeah. No, it's not Spencer time. No, it's please anything but Spencer time. But I thought the Brooklyn Nets, like, sort of, you know, they did everything they could, and this just wasn't ever supposed to be a series. There was one game in this series that was close, and it wasn't. I don't think it was fun for the Sixers to watch, but it did show we can beat you in more than one way. If you want to commit all your resources to shutting down the James Harden, Joel Embiid pick and roll machine, then there's other players on this roster that are going to hurt you. And in fact, Maxey is specifically well suited to slicing up a defense that is overcompensating for something. But yeah, any other thoughts you have on that? I don't want to spend too much time on it.
Tobias Harris had the best series, just kind of relative to expectations. Probably he was. Pretty incredible.
People always just forget, like they just want to act like Tobias Harris is bad because he's sort of an awkward fit and he's been de-emphasized in their offense. But like, he is a versatile, useful scorer who can shoot and also like attack matchups and is a bit of a playmaker in pick and roll situations. It's just, that's not what Philly has needed for much of the time that they've had Tobias Harris. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have game. And so it's nice that he gets an opportunity to remind people that he's pretty good at basketball. And especially like when he like shoots the ball well from 3, it's like, okay, Tobias Harris, feeling it.
Yeah, I don't know if I have any other thoughts about the series necessarily, but how do you feel about your T-Wolves?
Oh, yay, we get to discuss them before Trae Young. Well, you know, we reclaimed some dignity last night by not getting swept. So, season saved. I don't really have faith in the Timberwolves to gut out another victory or just play quality basketball for long enough. You know, even last night, there was plenty of plenty of moments where the Timberwolves looked like they were going to implode. The Nuggets just had a little implosion of their own, and that allowed us to get through. I think it's been a really, Anthony Edwards came into this series injured, but has, looks a lot healthier now and is just sort of like looking like a big star. Karl Anthony Towns has looked not like a star in his return to the playoffs, and this series has been a bit of an L for the Gobert Towns pairing.
Yeah,
they have just looked so awkward on offense when those two are on the floor. Even when they're not on the floor, I don't really understand what the Wolves are doing with Towns. Like they'll post him up like 20 feet from the basket and like make that seem like that's the play. He hasn't been setting a lot of screens, and I think this is actually the sneaky thing about the Wolves' problem with this pairing is that when Gobert's on the floor, you have to use him as the screener, but Towns is kind of best on offense when you put him in a lot of screen action. If you get like Towns in screen action makes your offense very hard to deal with. But Towns has been either the spacer or posting up, and Towns has been really struggling to score against any matchup. Like I saw Jamal Murray guard him on purpose, and Karl Anthony Towns not score. I've seen every player on the. I've seen DeAndre Jordan and Christian Brown guard Towns and get away with it. He is not punishing Bruce Brown. He's definitely not punishing Aaron Gordon or Jeff Green. He probably scores on Jokic better than he scores on Jeff Green or Aaron Gordon. So this has been I think when we were just talking about the front office questions for the Clippers, I'm just watching whatever the Alex Lohr, whatever the name of our new owner is, standing on the sidelines watching these games, and like I sense a reaction coming. I think the Wolves are in a difficult hole to escape as well without their draft capital, but this is. I mean, I don't even think we're having like a horrible series, but we're very clearly overmatched, and there's very clearly some roster problems here. Especially between like the Towns and Gobert fit, but also how Kyle Anderson fits in that, where we've had to sort of keep him off the floor to keep more speed on the roster on the floor with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's really good at shutting down Canadian players.
Yeah, and only Canadian players.
Yeah, he really steps up just against Shea and Jamal Murray.
Yeah. No, I think it's been a really nice series for Conley. I mean, you mentioned the Gobert Towns thing looking awkward, but I think it has been more Towns since Conley was added. Conley has made that made Gobert look a little bit more functional ever since he's been added to the. And I mean, he's had a really nice shooting season ever since he's been with the Wolves too. Like I've been impressed. It was looking like we were coming close to the end after, the Utah quick exit last year in the first round with Conley. But I don't know. I mean, he's looked reinvigorated in a Wolves uniform.
Yeah, he's also. I mean, there's been plenty of times where we've looked pretty lost on an offensive possession, and Conley's just kind of like scrapped his way to a bucket.
Yeah.
And that paired with Anthony Edwards is just a pretty explosive scoring performance by Anthony Edwards, and it's just like he's been getting buckets the whole game. His hero ball is working out just fine this series, but I don't know. I didn't really think we had a shot in this series. I always thought it was going to be a really bad matchup for us. So it was cool that we got a win in, but also I think the Nuggets have looked really good overall besides their implosion. Like, and they've also they've played smarter. It looks like Mike Malone has figured out what he wants to do with his bench a little bit more. Like he just has a consistent 8-man rotation and is not really messing out. I'm surprised to not see any Zeke Naji or Vlatko Canchara, but it looks like it's going to be Jeff Green and Christian Brown playing in this, and we'll see if that's going to be sustainable in their next series.
No, I think this series has. I mean, we'll see how it continues, but it's been an awesome series for Jamal Murray. He's looked pretty incredible. He looks like he's
probably the most important thing to talk
fully
about.
Back.
Is that Jamal Murray is.
Yeah. The 3-point shot is dropping, which is not something that was happening for the first half of the season. Also, Jamal Murray is just really amped up in this series. I don't know if it's because of Nickeil Alexander-Walker guarding him, but he's just kind of jawing at the Timberwolves bench during nearly every dead ball. So It's kind of.
I mean, I think that's what you like to see at it. Like, I think Jamal Murray, when he's been good, has just been an extremely hyper, extremely like poppy, decisive player. And this year he looked kind of sluggish and a step slow for a lot of it, and it was kind of up and down. But he definitely, yeah, I mean, he looks great. He's thrown some slick passes. I still think he's too wired to shoot sometimes. Like sometimes I watched him like, miss a wide open Michael Porter Jr. on the opposite wing to take a pull up three with a hand in his face. It's just like you gotta hit the easy ones. But then a couple plays later, he threw he drew two defenders on the baseline, wrap around pass or pass between two defenders to hit Jokic for like an easy two. And I mean, he's been playmaking well in this series. I just think his vision sometimes leaves something to be desired. But if he's hitting those pull ups and just sort of like attacking the defense that relentlessly, that's what makes Denver's offense just impossible to deal with for a defense.
Well, we should hit on Michael Porter Jr. too, because normally you wouldn't want your offensive possession to end with someone taking a pull-up three with a hand in their face, but with MPJ this series, it hasn't even seemed to matter. And I think he's one of the main reasons why this has really not been a great series for Kyle Anderson.
Yeah. I think too, like, I know that, you look at like, oh, there's no way Michael Porter Jr. is going to keep shooting 46% from three. I'm like, yeah, there
he kind of does.
It's
he
pretty
did that for
normal.
the whole season.
He didn't have an amazing looking shooting season this year.
Yeah.
And that just means he only shot 41% from three on 7 attempts on the season. Like, this guy's absolutely, absolutely capable of just like shooting 50% from three over a series, which is like, and he's going to get up a ton, and it's not just going to be spoon-fed stuff. Like, he'll get a nice pass from Jokic, but the defense will recover, and he'll he'll pump fake, and he'll take 2 dribbles to his left and pump fake again and get a defender in the air and then knock down a shot. Like, he's just an insane shooter. So Denver looks like what we expected they could look like at the beginning of the year. In this series, we'll see how it looks against a better opponent. I expect Denver to win out tomorrow night and wrap this series up. But the Wolves are so volatile, who knows? They might just have like maybe they got one more like heroic moment in it, but I would be very surprised if that was the case.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went into these playoffs really questioning Denver's bench, and that's kind of the main reason I did not pick them to make the Western Conference Finals or advance to the finals. But I don't know. Bruce Brown has looked really good. I think Jeff Green's given them solid minutes. He's held up defensively even at his advanced age, and Christian Brown just gives him, great energy. He's finishing over people whenever he gets to the basket. The jump shot hasn't quite been there, but I've just been impressed with his ability to attack the defense and kind of make things happen. So, and also just I don't know. He's a really good defensive player. Like, he's a rookie and makes mistakes sometimes, but just like on ball, I think at this point you can really trust him.
He's confident too, which I think is what allows rookies to play as rookies in the playoffs. Like, they have to have that crazy confidence.
Yeah,
I think Denver's bench will still show up to haunt them in a later round if they get all the way to the Western Conference Finals or something. I think we will start being like, okay, and Mike Malone doesn't trust anyone, so that 8-man rotation will shrink down to 7 or back down to 6, and all of a sudden, like, everyone's playing 40 minutes a game and guys are starting to get tired. But it's fine for round 1 against this Timberwolves team that is still hasn't figured themselves out, which is sort of understandable. Like, people love to dunk on the Timberwolves, but they also just want to ignore that this team did not, like, just had an absolutely chaotic season, and Karl Anthony Towns has barely played with this team, and like There's reasons beyond just the awkward fit and the bad roster construction why this team isn't that good.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves to dunk on Rudy Gobert, but let's
go
go ahead and talk about our final series really quick. Celtics Hawks. I know this has been your favorite series of the first round to watch. Would you like to tell us why?
What do you mean? What do you mean this is my favorite series to watch? What have I said? Who have I been hating in private?
Yeah, well, I just know you're not necessarily the biggest Hawks fan in the world, so.
I mean, I was more like they kind of broke my heart, but we've seen traces of the Hawks looking like the Hawks of old. I think Trae Young has really bounced back after like looking like he had been permanently figured out for the rest of time.
Yeah.
In games 1 and 2, he's been really, really aggressive. getting to the basket and finding seams in the defense, and he's been a lot for this Boston Celtics defense to handle. And Dejounte Murray has had some huge moments.
Oh yeah,
Has gone on absolute tears when they've been overplaying Trae Young. So it's nice to actually see that backcourt just kind of like they're just kind of performing the last couple games, which is nice. Which is nice to see for the Hawks.
I will say on the Celtics side of things, we're obligated to talk about the Jaylen Brown hand injury. It's something that we're contractually obligated to bring up because every podcast needs to do it. The Celtics have an injury to one of their major players, which doesn't seem to be affecting his jump shot or offensive effectiveness in any way, but it is there.
I didn't look at that contract before I signed it. I don't feel this is necessary, but I acknowledge that it has been made quite a narrative. They're still going to win this game in 4. I don't understand why Celtics fans are so defensive about that already. I love the Celtics guard rotation. I think I sometimes when I'm watching them, I'm just like, how did the NBA just let this team scoop up Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon and just add 2?
Gotta ask the Spurs front office.
Yeah.
And the Pacers,
Yeah. I don't know. Malcolm Brogdon was like a borderline all-star, when healthy the last couple of years, and Derek White had some pretty monster.
Okay,
moments
this is one thing I have to say because I come from this same front office on the bad end of a trade, right? When we traded Josh Hart to the Knicks, and he's been incredible for the Knicks.
Okay.
But there's this whole thing where you trade for a player and he's way better on the team that he goes to than the team that he was on prior. And I think that was the case.
I'm not criticizing Indiana here. I'm not saying Indiana made a bad trade. I'm more like, why did the other contenders not go get Malcolm Brogdon for that price? It just seems like
I guess that's fair.
With very little resistance, they scooped up Malcolm Brogdon, and now they just have this they just have 3 really big point guards that all do different things and can really mess with opponents. That's just for outside of backcourts that actually have star players. This is just the most solid backcourt in the NBA. That's just a crazy guard rotation, and that's not even the strength of this roster. Their 2 best players are wings, and then they have 2 really good defensive centers that do different things, and they used to have Grant Williams as well.
Well, yeah, that's the reason why people like me who picked the Celtics to win the finals did. It's just they have absolutely insane depth. We haven't seen this level of depth from a contending team since I don't even know.
Though that depth has seemed to shrink away a little bit in this playoffs, and they're only playing a 7-man rotation, and Grant Williams has fallen out of it. I mean, he fell out in the season; he's not back. And then they're then it's after that, it's Sam Hauser, Luke Cornett, Mike Muscala, Peyton Pritchard. None of those guys are playing, so it does actually seem like the Celtics' top 7 are rock solid. That they have 7 starting players basically. I mean, but after that, there's kind of a dramatic fall off.
So Grant Williams and Sam Hauser aren't playing. And that's a coaching decision. But I can almost guarantee you that they are better than any other team's 8th and 9th man.
But Grant Williams has been bad for a while now. Not just not just in terms of shooting the ball. He's been struggling defensively. I don't know if there's an injury there, but it's not like he randomly stopped playing Grant Williams. Grant Williams has fallen off, and we have not seen the Grant Williams of last year's playoffs in a while now. There's been a 20-game sample of Grant Williams just not looking like Grant Williams. I don't know what's going on there, but until I see him back, I feel like I kind of have to count him out a bit.
Yeah, no, I suppose
they're probably going to need
true.
him at some point, though, especially if Robert Williams gets injured again, which it feels like everyone's just waiting for Robert Williams to miss a game or a stretch of time at some point. But hopefully he doesn't. I love Robert Williams.
There could be an injury associated with Grant Williams, but I think part of it is there was kind of a turning point in the middle of the season where other teams seem to figure out that Grant Williams is really short and doesn't have very long arms and can't jump. So when he's guarding you on the perimeter, you can just kind of take a jump shot and it's not contested.
Right.
So I think that was one thing that hurt his perceived defensive value a bit.
Yeah, I mean, never stop PJ Tucker, but he's got longer arms.
Yeah, well, I mean, PJ Tucker suffers from some of the same physical limitations. But,
yeah.
Yeah.
The Hawks offense is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's just not going to be enough to beat the Celtics, and never was. And their defense was never going to be close. So I also expect this series to get wrapped up soon, though I will say the last two games, the Hawks have really turned a corner, and it's not out of the question that they are very competitive in Game 5.
I mean, everyone on the Hawks, for the most part, other than John Collins and Sadiq Bey, has been playing pretty well. So, I think that's impressive against the Celtics defense. They're getting nothing out of their 4 position for some reason, but...
Onyeka's had moments. Onyeka's been solid. I don't know. I guess he doesn't play the 4 at all.
Yeah, he's more of their 5, but
Yeah,
I guess they do put him on the floor with Clint Capella rarely.
I'm not sure if we've seen that configuration, or I mean, I not in my memory. Not with I don't really understand why across 2 coaches now the idea with John Collins is start him but never let him do anything.
Yeah, he's just a spot up 3-point shooter for the most part.
But that's like the thing.
That's
he's
like
the worst
that's the
at.
thing
I
he's
don't
the
know.
worst at. Yeah, I don't know.
The mysterious case of John Collins, like I used to blame the coaches, but there's other metrics that are hard to blame a coach on, like just the 3-point shot has fallen off 4 years in a row. It just seems like he does everything a little bit worse. So they shrink his role a little bit every year too, but it's not like if you dig into those numbers or watch him play, like, oh, he's just awesome, he's just not getting a chance. Like, he hasn't looked good in really sort of any capacity. And I've like, John Collins was like their last playoff run. John Collins was awesome. He was sort of like not from like a scoring perspective or anything, but he was like, oh yeah, I'm happy to like do the dirty work and just like, I'm just going to be a good athlete out there on the floor who chips in wherever I can. And he was still a normal 3-point shooter, and he was like playing good defense. And now it's just like, he looks kind of stiff and upright, and he's just sort of out there with no role. So I feel like bench him if you're not going to use him for anything. I don't get like Sadiq Bey is a better 3-point shooter. Like, so I don't get it.
Even run the 3-guard lineup, because Bogdan's been really good.
Yeah. Though, yeah, Bogdan's playing more minutes, I think, than... Oh, no, I guess not quite. They're playing around the same. But yeah, anyways, I think Atlanta has looked good these last 2 games. Let's see if they've got at least one more fight in them. But Boston is a much better team, and I expect them to close out this series.
Okay, I guess we'll leave off with this. Your finals pick was Bucks Nuggets. Still feeling good about that one?
Hard to feel good about the Bucks until, I mean, as soon as I get off this podcast, I'm gonna go check in on how Giannis is doing. I'm actually gonna check that right now before I commit to anything.
Bucks are up by 9,
and Giannis has 15 points. So yeah, Nuggets going to the finals.
Yeah, I'm not feeling so good about Grizz Lakers. I get Grizzlies Celtics.
Celtics.
I mean, I feel good about Celtics, but.
Yeah.
Less good about the Grizzlies. Not sure if they'll make it out of the first round. I guess.
Well, they might though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that front court is harder to picture that front court getting through 3 playoff series.
Turns out missing 2 of the guys in your top 7 rotation because they get hurt in or out for the entire playoffs actually matters.
Huh. That's one thing that we've learned this season. It's great that every NBA season we learn something, eh, Simon?
Yep. Well,
any final thoughts on these playoffs, or shall we say goodnight to the hordes of fans listening at home?
Yeah, no, I think that'll do it. We have the NBA lottery coming up soon. My Blazers have the 5th best odds. Got my fingers crossed for that. And your T-Wolves made the playoffs, so you are not going to have disaster strike and have to give up a super high lottery pick to the Jazz this year.
Yeah, that's very comforting. It's one of the most comforting moments of the season for me right now.
Yep.
All right, well, like I don't have to remind any of you of this now because it is the playoffs and you all feel this on a daily basis, but we here at the Underhand Free Throw still want to remind you that ball is life.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.